Have you ever looked at your phone hoping for a message that never came? Have you ever replayed the same conversations in your mind, wondering what changed, what you said wrong, or why someone who once made you feel so important suddenly became so distant? And the hardest question of all, have you ever loved someone so deeply that losing them made you start losing yourself? If you answered yes, then stay with this video until the very end. Because by the time you finish watching, you won't just understand why this pain feels so overwhelming. You'll discover how to take your power back, how to stop carrying emotional weight that was never yours to carry, and how to begin healing in a way that makes you stronger than you have ever been before. There is a kind of heartbreak that almost everyone recognizes. It is painful, but it makes sense. Two people grow apart. They talk about it. They cry. They say goodbye. Eventually, life moves forward. But there is another kind of heartbreak that feels completely different. It doesn't end with clarity. It ends with questions. It doesn't leave you angry. It leaves you confused. It doesn't simply break your heart. It quietly begins to reshape the way you see yourself. That is what happens to many people after loving someone who constantly moved between closeness and distance. One day they made you feel safe. The next day they felt impossible to reach. One moment they opened their heart. The next moment it felt like an invisible wall had appeared between you. The hardest part wasn't always the distance itself. It was never knowing when it would happen again. Your mind learned to expect uncertainty. Your heart learned to celebrate the smallest moments of affection because they became rare. Slowly, without realizing it, you stopped asking, "Am I happy?" and started asking, "How do I make them stay?" That is where so many people lose themselves, not because they are weak, not because they love too much, but because the human mind is wired to search for connection. When connection becomes unpredictable, your brain doesn't simply let go. It tries harder. It searches for answers. It looks for patterns. It tells you that if you just become more patient, more understanding, more supportive, maybe everything will return to the way it once was. So you wait. You hope. You explain, you forgive, you tell yourself that tomorrow will be different, and sometimes tomorrow is different. They smile again, they become affectionate again, they remind you why you fell in love. For a brief moment, everything feels perfect. Then the distance returns, and the cycle begins again. Without realizing it, your emotional world starts revolving around someone else's ability to be emotionally available. Their attention becomes your peace. Their silence becomes your anxiety. Their presence becomes your happiness. Their absence becomes your pain. This is one of the most exhausting emotional experiences a person can go through because it creates a battle inside your own mind. One part of you remembers the beautiful moments. Another part of you cannot ignore the loneliness. One part believes love can fix everything. Another part is slowly running out of strength. If this sounds familiar, there is something you need to hear today. Your pain is real. Your confusion is real. Your exhaustion is real. You are not imagining it. Many people spend months, even years, trying to explain away their own emotions. They convince themselves they are asking for too much. They tell themselves they are being too emotional, too sensitive, or too needy. But deep inside, they are simply asking for something every human being needs. Consistency, safety, emotional connection. Those are not impossible expectations. They are the foundation of healthy love. The tragedy is that when these needs go unmet for long enough, something unexpected begins to happen. Instead of questioning the relationship, people begin questioning themselves. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe I expect too much. Maybe if I become better, they'll love me differently. Those thoughts can slowly become louder than your own inner voice. Little by little, your confidence fades. Your peace disappears. Your self-worth becomes tied to someone else's emotional availability. And this is why healing after this kind of relationship is so difficult. You are not only grieving the person, you are grieving the version of yourself that slowly disappeared while trying to keep the relationship alive. The version of yourself who laughed without overthinking. The version who slept peacefully. The version who didn't feel anxious every time the phone stayed silent. The version who believed love should feel safe instead of uncertain. The good news is this: that version of you is not gone forever. It has been buried beneath disappointment, fear, and emotional exhaustion. And buried things can be uncovered. No matter how long you've carried this pain, your story does not end here. This heartbreak is not the final chapter of your life. It is the beginning of a new understanding, a new strength, a new relationship with yourself. Today is not about blaming another person. It is not about proving who was right or wrong. It is about reclaiming the parts of yourself that pain convinced you to abandon. Because the greatest victory after heartbreak is not making someone come back. It is becoming someone who no longer needs to chase love to feel worthy of receiving it. And that journey begins with one simple truth. Before you can heal your heart, you must first understand why it hurts the way it does. The moment you begin asking why your heart reacts so strongly, everything starts to change. Instead of seeing your emotions as a weakness, you begin to recognize that they have been trying to protect something precious inside you. Pain is not your enemy. It is a signal. It is your mind telling you that something important has been missing for far too long. When love starts feeling like a constant pursuit, the relationship quietly changes its shape. It no longer feels like two people walking side by side. Instead, one person keeps moving forward while the other spends all their energy trying to close the distance. This shift rarely happens overnight. It grows little by little until it becomes the new normal. At first, the changes seem small. Messages become shorter. Plans are canceled more often. Conversations lose their warmth. You notice the difference, but you tell yourself not to overreact. You believe everyone goes through stressful seasons. You choose patience because caring for someone means giving them space when they need it. That choice comes from kindness. But kindness without balance can slowly turn into self-neglect. You begin adjusting your expectations. You stop bringing up your own needs because you do not want to create conflict. You convince yourself that silence is better than another uncomfortable conversation. Every compromise feels reasonable by itself, yet together they slowly reshape who you are. Without noticing, your focus moves away from your own emotional world. Every morning starts with wondering how they feel. Every evening ends with questioning what their behavior means. Your happiness becomes connected to signals that are completely outside your control. This is one of the hidden traps of chasing emotional closeness. Your brain starts treating every small sign of affection like a major victory. A warm text feels bigger than it should. A simple compliment stays in your thoughts for hours. A brief moment of connection becomes enough to erase weeks of loneliness. Psychologists often describe this pattern as intermittent reinforcement. When positive moments arrive unpredictably, they become even more powerful. The uncertainty itself strengthens the attachment. Think about how difficult it is to walk away from something when you believe the next good moment could arrive at any time. Hope keeps whispering that tomorrow might finally be different. That quiet voice becomes stronger than the evidence you have already lived through. This is why logic and emotion often begin fighting each other. Your mind notices the inconsistency. Your heart remembers the possibility. One tells you to step back. The other tells you to hold on a little longer. Living between those two voices is exhausting. It drains your confidence because every decision feels uncertain. You question your instincts. You replay memories again and again, searching for an answer that never fully satisfies you. Many people think they stayed because they lacked strength. The truth is often the opposite. They stayed because they cared deeply. They believed commitment meant refusing to give up when things became difficult. They thought endurance was proof of love. Loyalty is a beautiful quality. Compassion is a beautiful quality. Patience is a beautiful quality. But every beautiful quality loses its purpose when it requires you to abandon yourself. There is a difference between supporting another person and carrying a relationship alone. One creates connection, the other creates exhaustion. Imagine trying to fill a bucket with water while a hole remains at the bottom. No matter how much effort you give, the bucket never stays full. After a while, you stop questioning the hole. Instead, you assume you simply need to pour faster. That is what emotional chasing often feels like. You work harder. You become more understanding. You become more available. You offer more reassurance. Yet the emptiness keeps returning. Eventually, many people start believing they simply have not loved enough. That belief becomes incredibly dangerous because it teaches you to solve every problem by giving more of yourself away. Healthy relationships do not ask you to disappear in order to survive. Real connection allows both people to exist fully. Both voices matter. Both hearts are respected. Both individuals feel seen without having to earn the basic right to be emotionally important. When those conditions are missing, your nervous system remains alert. Even during peaceful moments, part of you stays prepared for the next period of distance. Your body never completely relaxes because it has learned that stability may not last. Over time, this emotional tension can spread into every part of life. Work becomes harder to focus on. Friendships receive less attention. Sleep becomes restless. Even moments of joy feel incomplete because a part of your mind is always wondering what is happening somewhere else. This is not because you are incapable of being happy. It is because emotional uncertainty consumes mental energy. Your brain keeps searching for solutions to a problem it cannot solve alone. Here is the turning point. You are not responsible for managing another person's willingness to connect. You cannot create openness through endless sacrifice. You cannot build lasting security by ignoring your own emotional reality. The relationship may have convinced you that your role was to keep everything together, but healing begins when you release a responsibility that never truly belonged to you. Your value has never depended on how successfully you could reach someone who kept pulling away. Your worth has never been measured by how much disappointment you could tolerate. The deepest form of love is not proving that you can survive endless emotional hunger. It is recognizing that your heart deserves nourishment too. This realization does not arrive all at once. It grows quietly, one honest thought at a time. Every time you stop blaming yourself for another person's emotional distance, you reclaim a small piece of your confidence. Every time you choose truth over false hope, your inner strength becomes a little steadier. The journey ahead is not about learning how to make someone else stay. It is about discovering why you believed you had to chase acceptance in the first place. Because once you understand that hidden pattern, you stop running after love that keeps slipping away. You begin creating a life where peace is no longer something another person controls. It becomes something you build from within, and no one can take it from you. Once you begin to see that your value was never meant to depend on another person's ability to stay emotionally present, a new question naturally appears. If the distance was not created because you were unlovable, then why did your mind keep insisting that you were the problem? This question deserves an honest answer because it sits at the center of so much emotional suffering. The human mind does not like uncertainty. It would rather accept a painful explanation than live without one. When something important falls apart and no clear reason is given, your brain immediately starts searching for a story that makes sense. It gathers every memory, every conversation, every mistake, and tries to build a conclusion. Most of the time, that conclusion points inward. Maybe I spoke too much. Maybe I was too quiet. Maybe I asked for too much. Maybe I should have been more patient. Maybe I expected too much. These thoughts seem harmless at first. They feel like an attempt to learn from the past, but if they continue without balance, they slowly become accusations instead of reflections. You stop learning and you start judging yourself. That is how self-blame quietly takes control. It does not arrive as one dramatic moment. It grows through hundreds of small thoughts repeated every single day. Every unanswered message becomes evidence against you. Every canceled plan becomes proof that you failed. Every cold interaction becomes another reason to question your own worth. Over time, these beliefs settle deep inside your mind until they begin to feel like facts, even when they are nothing more than fear speaking with confidence. This is one of the greatest tricks emotional pain can play. It convinces good people that they were simply not enough. But consider something for a moment. If another person's emotional walls existed long before you entered their life, could you really have been the one who built them? If someone struggled to express vulnerability before meeting you, could your love alone have erased years of learned protection? The answer may be difficult to accept because part of your heart still wants to believe that everything could have been different if only you had found the perfect words. Yet real life does not work that way. Every person carries experiences that shape how they connect with others. Childhood memories, disappointments, broken trust, painful losses, and personal fears all leave invisible marks. Those marks influence relationships long before two people ever meet. Understanding this changes everything. It shifts your focus away from endless self-criticism and toward a more balanced view of reality. This does not mean every decision you made was perfect. No relationship is free from mistakes. Everyone says things they later regret. Everyone has moments of insecurity. Everyone could handle certain situations better. Growth comes from accepting those truths without turning them into evidence that you deserved emotional neglect. There is a huge difference between taking responsibility and carrying guilt that was never yours. Responsibility helps you grow. False guilt keeps you trapped. Imagine planting a seed in dry ground. You water it every day. You protect it from strong winds. You do everything within your control, but the soil itself cannot support growth. Would you spend years believing you failed because the plant did not bloom? Of course not. You would understand that healthy growth depends on more than effort alone. Relationships follow the same principle. Love needs openness. Trust needs consistency. Connection needs willingness from both hearts. One person cannot create these qualities for two. This realization is not meant to erase sadness. It is meant to free you from carrying impossible expectations. Think about how many hours you spent replaying old conversations, how many nights you searched for hidden meanings, how many times you wished you could travel backward and choose different words. Now imagine placing all that energy into rebuilding your own life instead. The same mind that kept analyzing every detail can become the mind that creates peace. The same heart that remained loyal through disappointment can become the heart that shows compassion toward itself. Everything begins with changing one belief. Instead of asking, "Why wasn't I enough?" ask, "Why did I believe someone else's inability to connect defined my value?" That single shift opens a completely different path. It replaces shame with curiosity. It replaces punishment with understanding. It replaces endless regret with the possibility of healing. There is another truth many people overlook. Sometimes the deepest wound is not losing the relationship itself. It is losing the future you imagined. You pictured conversations that never happened. You imagined milestones that never arrived. You built dreams around potential instead of reality. When those dreams disappear, it feels like grieving a life that never had the chance to exist. That grief is real. But healing requires learning the difference between loving a person and loving the possibility of who they might become. Potential can inspire hope. Reality determines whether a relationship can truly thrive. When those two become confused, disappointment becomes almost unavoidable. Your future cannot be built on promises that never become consistent actions. It cannot rest on endless waiting. It cannot survive on hope alone. A peaceful life grows from what is real, not from what you desperately wish reality would become. As this truth settles into your heart, something remarkable begins to happen. The questions that once haunted you start losing their power. Instead of asking why someone pulled away, you begin asking what kind of connection allows you to feel emotionally safe. Instead of measuring your worth through another person's responses, you begin measuring your progress by how honestly you treat yourself. That is the first sign that healing is no longer just an idea. It is becoming your new direction. The journey ahead is not about finding someone who never disappoints you. It is about becoming someone who no longer abandons themselves while trying to earn another person's affection. And once that lesson becomes part of who you are finally ready to understand the deeper emotional pattern that kept your heart holding on long after it had already been hurt.